Welcome to The Line. Last weekend, we saw the results of a poll conducted for the Albuquerque Journal. That poll, handled by Research and Polling, Inc., sampled voters who cast ballots in 2014 and 2016 general elections and, importantly, said they were very likely to vote in this year's election. It was conducted September 7th through the 13th, and the poll asked, who would they vote for if the election were held that day? Results were published for the governor, Senate races, and for the congressional districts 1 and 2. Now, to talk about this poll and other issues of the week, I'm joined at the table by our Line opinion panelists, starting with Laura Sanchez-Reve, an attorney at Cuddy & McCarthy, LLP. Harry Van Buren is off the road and back, professor at UNM's Anderson School of Management. Daniel Foley is here. He's always in New Mexico, former House Minority Whip. And Merritt Allen from Vox Optima, LLC. Merritt, I'm going to start with you. I want to hold the specifics of the specific races for a quick second, but in general terms, did anything jump out at you about these polls? Any surprises for you?
Yes, that they actually had them. That somebody commissioned a poll after 2016.
Nice.
Because that's hard. That's hard to justify, and I think polling has become harder because folks won't respond to them.
I hear this a lot, this difference between landlines and cell phones and who's calling.
And the notion of a poll has been so abused, and so you've got candidates who will do robocalls saying, candidate X believes X, Y, and Z.
Right.
Does this change your opinion about them? And they call it a scientific poll. Right. So the fact that like a no-kidding, real-deal poll was done, I'm very glad to see. Specific surprises?
Were you surprised no one even bothered for CD3? It's so...
Well, yeah, and this is terrible because I've been trying to be a more active Republican, and I cannot name the Republican candidate.
You wouldn't be alone. Don't feel badly.
That's
It's just one of those things.
That was surprising, but the numbers, they kind of reflect the state.
Sure.
I think Gary Johnson did what we expected him to do. The question is whether that grows or not.
That's a good point.
And I think that's to me is the only real outlier, interesting element of it. I know Dan's got some interesting things.
Good point there. I want to circle back because you make a very good point there. Harry, let's start with the governor's race.
Right.
There's this idea that there's this magic threshold of 50%. Right. That once you reach it, and it looked like Michelle Lujan Grisham has reached it in this poll, that somehow the confetti guns are going off and the thing's over. It's not that big a gap. Well, 7 points is big, but it's not
it's not insurmountable by any stretch of the
exactly.
imagination. I mean, one of the things that really surprised me is how close the polls were across the board. I mean, 7 and 8 points. And I just feel like politics has a different dynamic in 2018 than it did, say, in 2014, where I could see the governor's race going down to the last week, independent on whether the president says something or not.
Right.
That could be something at the margin that changes how people think about things. So if I were Michelle Lujan Grisham, I wouldn't be looking at that and saying, I've got this in the bag. There still is an awful long way to go.
Good point there. Touch on that if you will.
I mean, I think that, getting over 50 is obviously where you want to be.
Sure.
I think the sheer fact that the Republican governor's campaign, the Republican Governors Group, has not weighed in this race is pretty telling. You see nothing paid for by the Republican Governors Association. I think that's telling.
Do you anticipate that through the race, that they're not going to get in and help, or are you surprised
imagine,
up to this point?
Well, I'm surprised that up to this point. I would imagine if it becomes a 1 or 2 point race, something's going to happen.
Right.
But I don't believe they're going to weigh in. I think that they're going to concentrate their money elsewhere. It's also interesting because the chairwoman of the Republican Governors Association is Susana Martinez. Right. I think that Pierce is. I think Pierce is in serious trouble in this race. I think that I think he's run for statewide office multiple times, and to still be at this level tells you, what people think of him. Look at where he is, and he's spending money on TV running for governor. And Gary Johnson steps into a Senate race who's made some of the craziest comments running for president the last time, and he's already at almost 20%.
With no money spent.
With zero money spent. I mean, the only ads he's got so far is the Republican Party asking him to get out. Right. I think having Heinrich under 50% shows that is still that New Mexico still is in play for electing a Republican if the right Republican runs for the U.S. Senate. So I think there's a lot of stuff going on. I think it's interesting you make the comment about what the president does.
Right.
I thought that would have an effect too, except apparently last night Congressman Pierce made it clear that Trump was going to run a primary opponent against him. So I don't know. He seems to be trying to distance himself from the president. I'm not sure that he's going to be successful.
That was the televised debate on Wednesday night, right? Exactly. Laura, I want to ask you to pick up the governor's race. We're going to, since Dan mentioned the Senate race, I'm going to give you a 2-for-1. They'll swing back for the Senate stuff with you guys too. But the governor's race is Michelle Lujan Grisham riding just a wind that's out there right now. There's a Democratic wing nationwide. Is this what's going on here with her gap?
Well, I think that's partially the case.
Okay.
I do agree with Dan. I mean, Steve Pearce has run before statewide. He has not done well. He's lost statewide races. He's for the fact that he's run before and she has not run statewide, you would expect him to be higher. Certainly name ID, people know who he is, but he must have negatives associated with that if the polls show that he's not as doing as well. But that doesn't mean, I think Michelle is a very tough campaigner. She raises a lot of money. She's very assertive when it comes to raising money. She's very articulate. She definitely knows how to handle herself in a debate, and I think she showed that this week. And so I think that the worst thing that she and the Democrats could do is to take this for granted. I think it's important to just keep focused on the end game. And voting is around the corner. I mean, we think of November 6th as the date. It's the 6th this year, right?
Yeah, I know.
Remember. But voting really starts mid-October, so we're talking about a very long election cycle where a lot can change.
That's a good
And I
point.
do think that
Nationally and locally.
right? Whatever we hear nationally or in the here in ads and other things that happen could change those dynamics.
I think Michelle Lujan Grisham is also fortunate. People aren't talking about, but the Speaker of the House, Brian Egoff, and the election committee he's put together that's been at work for almost 2.5 years now, recruiting candidates, working candidates, they are committed to gaining seats in the House. And I think that's going to have an up-ballot effect. I mean, if they're getting out more progressive Democrats, if they're working to get candidates out in places like southeastern New Mexico, I think having an articulate candidate running for the 2nd congressional seat, I mean, this is a seat that Harry Teague won, kind of a shocking thing on the Obama wave, and then he was gone afterwards. But you watch those commercials that are being run right now against Yvette Herrell. I think Yvette's going to win the race. But the young lady that's running against her, and I cannot, Small. Xochitl Torres Small. I mean, some of the best ads I've seen, talking about she doesn't care what party you are, she wants to work together to make New Mexico better. I think you're seeing a different approach, and I think it's benefiting the Democrats. I think clearly, look, I served with Steve Pearce, I worked with Michelle Lujan Grisham. I think when you put those two out in front of people, I think people have a feeling that Michelle's approachable. You can talk to Michelle.
She has history.
She has. I could tell you, I don't agree with a lot of her politics.
But see, I find Steve Pearce very likable, and I liked very much how moderate he went through the summer. Really speaking to jobs,
His ads were terrific, actually.
Yeah,
His TV
and
ads,
then what really struck me, I read Joe Monahan this morning, and he's a very unabashed Democratic sympathizer, basically castigating Pearce for not slamming Lujan Grisham on the what's her business called? Her Delta, Delta Consulting,
That has gone
and
quiet,
leaving that
hasn't it?
off, and
Yeah.
so. I find him very approachable. I think he has some good ammunition, and he just chose not to pick a fight because I think we're all so sick of
But his
the
hands are
negative
going to be
language.
tied at some point.
Well,
he's going to have to get into a
and
fight.
Well, he's going to have to own his ads.
That's
He's
right.
going to have to
Part
own
of
his
the problem that
ads.
Pierce is facing is he's got a record. I mean, he's a member of the House Freedom Caucus. He's voted with Trump 85% of the time. I mean, there are the comments that he's made about his wives voluntarily submitting to husbands and accepting homosexuality, leading to polygamy. And people don't forget that stuff. And so he's trying to move back to the center with his ads. And it just doesn't, I'm not quite sure that it's going to work because people remember all of his positions.
If you thought he was going to run for governor.
Let me get these guys in. Sorry about that, Dan, but I just want to, down to about 2 minutes. The Senate race, I want to pick up on you guys on that. Ryan Congliosi this week put out, head of the Republican Party, state Republican, saying to Gary Johnson, just drop out.
Yeah.
Why are you doing this? Just drop out. What's your sense of how this might go with him in this race now? Bad for Republicans?
I think it's
Completely?
really
Was
bad
it
for
worse?
Republicans.
Okay.
And here's I think a really good signal for that. If you go to the Wikipedia page for the Senate race, there's a picture of Johnson, there's a picture of Heinrich, there's no picture of Mick Rich. So whoever came up with the page didn't even think enough to find a picture of Mick Rich to put up on the Wikipedia page. So I think with Johnson in the race, there's just no chance whatsoever that Rich is going to be able to pick up enough support.
Same, you agree with that? It's not too much ground to make up, split too many ways?
I think so. I
Yeah.
think Johnson entering the race absolutely ensured Heinrich will keep the seat. And I don't, and I don't object to a third party in the race. I think it makes things interesting, regardless which side of the aisle that third party is on. I really am frustrated with candidates dropping out mid-cycle, and you feel like it's because the pressure is coming from the party. Let's find someone more electable,
Right.
and let's just throw and after you've done all that work, it's unfair.
Right.
I understand why it's being done. I think the libertarians want to make a case that they can get a good percentage going and get more recognition as a major party, and I understand all those reasons. But I think the end result will be that Mick Rich.
Gary went through this when he ran for governor. They told him get out because he was going to wind up splitting the primary vote.
right.
Then when he won the primary, they said there was zero chance of beating
right.
Bruce King. 8 years later, after him being governor, the one thing you learn is don't count him out.
That's right. I want to have you carry the freight solo on this. Deb Haaland's a point under that magic 50%. Can Janice Allen-Jones make up? She's at 41 now. That's 9 points or 10 points close is a lot. Can she get there?
It is a lot, but it's not that different from the other race down
Right.
south. CD2 also has Yvette Harrell at 48 and Xochitl Torres Small at 41. So all of these are, in that range. I think it's possible to make up that difference between now and Election Day. But here's I think what the Republicans have going against them, as you look at the numbers, is that the polls are done based on repeat voters. So it's people
Right.
who voted in 2014, they voted in 2016, and so you have people who are steady voters. Typically, that's who's getting polled here. And Brian Sanderoff has stated that's who his universe was. But when you consider who actually are new voters or people who are inspired to go for the first time,
Right.
they tend to lean Democrat.
I see.
So it's people who aren't necessarily part of the ordinary structure of of either party. And so you have potentially also some decline to states if they're so inclined to go vote. And so I think that it's also regional though. So you have new voters in some areas,
right.
like CD2.
That's right.
If they're brand new voters, they may
right.
be actually leaning Republican. So that could help Yvette Harrell. Same thing here. I think new voters, people who are not necessarily part of any universe that would be polled, would lean Democrat. So I think that favors Deb Haaland.
I think having the
point
House
there.
too, like I said,
Quickly,
having Egoff put that committee together that the Republicans don't seem to have on the House side, they don't
Right.
seem to have at the state party side. I think that's grassroots politics, and I think you start driving out rural votes for your candidate for state representative, it has an up ballot effect, and I think
right.
that Democrats have that edge right now over Republicans.
Glad you got that in. That's a good point. We'll have to wrap that there. When we come back to the line, we'll look at new developments for the Albuquerque rail yards and the 10th anniversary of the rail yard in Santa Fe. But up next, I sit down with Christopher Roskowski, the Secretary of New Mexico's Public Education Department, to talk about teacher and student evaluations, other education priorities, and the politics around our education system.